So I actually already made one video on this homework. I explained questions 1, 2, 7, 13, certain questions. I want to explain the other ones now. So if we go to number 3, it is a matching question, but let's just go through the steps. Step 1 is to rewrite it in slope-intercept form. That means we want to get y by itself. So what's the first thing to do right there? Add x. Let me zoom in as far as I can here. Let's add x to both sides. So plus x right here, plus x over here. We're going to have a new inequality that reads 2y is greater than or equal to x plus 4. Again, you want the x term first and the number all by itself at the end. You want the plus 4 at the end because technically that's going to be our b value once y is by itself. So let's get rid of the 2 in front of the y. There's really a 2 times y in front of it. So let's get rid of it by dividing, doing the opposite. Dividing by 2, dividing by 2, and dividing by 2. And you have to recognize there's an invisible 1 right in front of the x. So now, that's why I zoomed in so much so I could have space right here. So now I'm going to rewrite my final slope-intercept form inequality. And that's going to be y is greater than or equal to, the slope is actually 1/2 with the x, and the b value is plus 2. So I'm going to put plus 2. Again, the slope is 1/2, and the b value is 2. So now that we know the m and the b, now we're able to graph it. Okay, so let's take a look at these multiple choices over here. Which one crosses at 2?
2,
A crosses at 2. Also, B crosses at 2. So we need to determine whether it's A or B. Well, if I look at this one, which is a solid line, and this one, which is a dotted line, maybe we could conclude which one's the correct answer just by looking at solid or dotted. Number 3 has to be what?
A.
Has to be solid, so it has to be A, correct? Okay, and of course, if we do go to the y-intercept of 2, and you go up 1/2, so here's the y-intercept of 2. If you go up 1/2, you'll get this solid line. Now for the final step, even though we already know that this is the correct answer, for the final step, you need to shade in where all of your solutions are at. So if you do test a point like 0, 0, 0 for x, 0 for y, if it works, then you'd have to shade in the bottom. If it doesn't work, then you'd have to shade in the other side. Now we already know it doesn't work because we already know that the shading is up here. But let's pretend we didn't know that. Let's pretend we didn't know where to shade. We'd have to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y, either into the original or into the modified. If you go in for the modified, 0 for y, 1/2 times 0 for x, you're going to end up with 0 is greater than or equal to 2, which is false. So that means that the origin 0, 0 does not work. So right here, this point does not work, which means none of the points on this side of the line will work. None of them are solutions. That means that all the solutions are on the other side of that solid line. I hope that helps. Number 4, if I wanted to graph this, what would I have to do? Subtract x. Thank you. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Let's rewrite it. It's going to be y. I don't flip it because I didn't divide or multiply by a negative. I just subtracted x. I'm going to rewrite it, but I'm going to put the x term first. This minus x, I'm going to put it first. Minus x. And this positive 1, I'm going to put it second. Plus 1. There it is in slope-intercept form. And I could also put an invisible 1 in front of the x, right behind that minus sign. So now I could see that my slope is -1/1, and my b value is +1. Okay, so just a quick sketch. I'm not even going to look at the answers over there. A quick sketch. It crosses at 1 on the y. You put a dot right there. Now from that point, from 1, I go down 1 and over 1. And I put a dot right here. So if I go down 1 and over 1, and I put a dot right there, then I could draw my line by continuing that pattern of down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Or backwards this way. Okay, now is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line? Definitely dotted because the original inequality or this inequality does not have a solid line underneath it. So I need to make sure that there's dots that create this line, put arrows on it. Now I also need to shade in either one side of the line or the other side of the line. It depends where my answers are at. You want to represent all your answers. So if you test the point 0, 0, which is clearly on the lower left side of this red dotted line, if it works, I shade in that side. If it doesn't work, I shade in the other side. So think about it. If you test the point 0 for x and 0 for y, it's as easy as plugging in 0 right here into the original and plugging in this 0 right here into the original, and it will say 0 plus 0, which is what? 0. And you really have 0 is greater than 1. What do you guys think about that? Is 0 greater than 1? Heck no, right? 0 is not greater than 1. 0 is less than 1. So what do we know about the origin 0, 0? It did not work. It's a false statement. So where does it work? If it doesn't work on this side, it must work on the other side. So any point on this side will not work, but all points on the other side will work. So that's why we shade in that side of the red dotted line. Okay, let's move on to another question. Let's do 6. Why not? Let's do 6 because it's ready to graph. What's our m value? M value is 1 over 1. What's our b value? -5. So obviously it crosses the y-axis where? -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Way down here it crosses. Now from that point, do I rise up or do I go down? You rise up. The slope is positive, so you're going to go up 1 over 1. And then up 1 over 1. So you need to put a dot after you move up 1 over 1. Put a dot right there, and keep the pattern going till you get from one side to the other. And you could use the pattern backwards to go all the way clear across to the other direction. Now, is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line?
Solid.
Solid. Why solid? Because of the solid line that's underneath the inequality. So we know it's going to be a solid line, so let's go ahead and draw that solid line right through the dots. And then the final step is to shade in where our answers are at. So if you test the point 0, 0, you're going to determine whether it works or not. So if you test the point 0, 0 on the original, 0 for x, 0 for y, when you plug in a 0 right there for x and a plug in a 0 right there for y, it's going to say 0 is greater than or equal to 0 minus 5. So 0 is greater than or equal to -5. True or false?
True.
True. 0 is greater than any negative number. So what do we know about this coordinate 0, 0? It's a solution. It works. So if this point works, all the points on this side will work. None of these will work. Why do we graph? To represent our solutions. Where are our solutions at? Up here on this side of the red line. So that's why we shade in that side of the red line. It's that simple. You always want to represent where your answers are at. Let's try number 9. Or, now let's go for number 8. That one looks a little more fun. Okay, so what's the m value right there? 2 over 1. Perfect. What's the b value right there?
4.
That's right. So it crosses at 4. Go to the y-axis. Go to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put a dot right there. From that point, do I go up or do I go down? I go up. How much do I go up? 2. So from here, I'm going to go up. 1, 2. I'm at the edge. And how much do I run? 1 over. To the right. Always to the right. So I put a dot right here. And then I'm going to extend the line by using that same pattern of going up 2 over 1. But I'm going to go backwards. Over 1, down 2. Over 1, down 2. So I keep going over 1, down 2. And put a dot there. Over 1, down 2. And so on until you get to the other side of the line. I'm sorry, I said from one side to the other of the graph, not the line. Anyway, is this going to be a solid line or dotted line? Solid. Thank you very much. So let's do a solid line right here. And now our final step is to represent where our answers are at. So they're either up here on this side, or, let me erase them because I don't know if it really is up here, or they're down there on the other side. Okay, how do we know what side the answers are on? We have to actually test it. Okay, so let's test any point we want. The easiest point to test is 0, 0. If I plug in a 0 for x, it's going to say 2 times 0. If I plug in a 0 for y, it's going to be a 0 right there in place of y. Don't forget about the plus 4 that's still on the right side of the inequality. So what does this inequality say? It says 0 is less than or equal to 2 times 0 is nothing, plus 4 is 4.
That's true.
That is true. So this guy right here, it works. Happy face. Okay, you don't need the happy face. But the bottom line is it does work. It is a solution. So all of your solutions are down there. If it wouldn't have worked, then you'd have to shade in the other side. All the solutions will stick together either on one side of the line or the other side of the line. You guys get it?
Yes, sir.
All right. 11 or 12, or both, or 9, or 10. What do you guys say? 9? You want to get y by itself? What do? Subtract x. Subtract x. Rewrite. Y is greater than, it didn't flip because we didn't multiply or divide by negative. And rewrite it with your x term first. That's a negative x with a positive 3. Now, of course, that negative x is really a negative 1 in front of that x. So it's a negative 1x. And of course, if you want it to look like a fraction, you put it over 1. So there you could clearly see that the m value is negative 1 over 1, and the b value is 3. So the b value is 3. It crosses at 3. From that point, am I going to go up or am I going to go down?
Go down.
Down 1 and 1 to the right. Down 1, 1 to the right. Down 1, 1 to the right, and so on and so on. Use the pattern backwards, and you'll get clear across from one side of the graph to the other. Final step, or no, final 2 steps. Is it a solid line or is it a dotted line? Dotted, so let's put some dots or dashes. And then we need to shade. Our answers are either on one side or the other side. So let's test 0, 0. Going to the original, 0 for x, 0 for y. Add that together, it is 0. Is 0 greater than 3?
No.
No, it's not. So it does not work. So my answers are on the other side. So I shade in the top part of that red dotted line. Make sense? All right.
Can you do either 12 or 13?
Let's do 12. And 13 is on the previous video, so you guys could watch that later. So right here on number 12, let's get y by itself. I'm going to subtract 7. Subtract 7. I will have y is less than or equal to 3. Now you can put 3 over 1 because that's going to be the slope. 3 over 1x. And then 4 take away 7 is minus 3. So I color coordinated right there. The slope is 3 over 1. The b value is negative 3. So it's going to cross the y-axis at negative 3. And then from that point, you're going to go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1 and put a dot right there. And then you keep going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1 and put a dot right there. Is this line going to be solid or dotted?
Solid.
Solid, because it does have a solid line underneath it. So you do a solid line going from point to point, put an arrow, completely solid. Now you need to shade in where your answers are at. They're either going to be on the left side, upper left, or lower right of this whole red line. So how do you do that? You test a point like 0, 0. Now if your line were going right through the origin, you can't test 0, 0. You have to pick a different point. Those examples came out on the previous video. Please watch that video if you haven't already. So let's test 0, 0, which is clearly on the left side of that red line. If I plug in 0 for x and 0 for y, think about it. Put a 0 right here, which will make it 0. 0 plus 4 is 4. So let's write that down. There's a 4 on this side of the inequality. And if I plug in a 0 for x, or for y, right here as well, it's going to say 0 plus 7 is 7. So I have a 7 on this side of the inequality. What do you guys say? Is that true or false?
False.
False. 7 is not less than 4. So because 7 is not less than 4, 0, 0 is not an answer. So that means that our answers are on the other side of this red dotted line. Solid line, I'm sorry. And that's it, guys. It's as simple as that. I did about half of them for you. You guys need to finish this up in class right now. Do the rest. Obviously, if you need more help, watch the other videos.